Hey, it's Les from the TV Dudes. This week, I'm thrilled to chat with musical theater writer Billy Recce. The award-winning young singer and songwriter has a new pop single, Come Out, which features a fabulous music video, and we'll hear that song in just a moment. Billy's new song contains all the quirky pop sounds of his debut album, The Perks of Being a Snowflake, which you can hear on Apple Music and Spotify. We'll have the link in the description. Billy is also known for his Broadway-bound musical about Heidi Fleiss, entitled Little Black Book. Also, his Chick-Fil-A queer musical satire, Fowl Play, as well as his hit Off-Broadway show, a musical about Star Wars. Billy is a 2022 Jonathan Larson Grant finalist and has been creating short-form musical content over on TikTok, amassing 2 million views in his first month. I'm thrilled to chat with him. It's a fun interview, and I hope you enjoy.
Come out, come out.
On the shelf since God knows when. Chuck your sourdough starter out. I don't wanna ever even think of it again. Do me a solid and forget that shit. You're turning to to feel sane. Feels like 15 years and 15 pounds since I last saw your face. But let's not think about how long it's been, and let's cut to the chase. I heard you joined Etsy. I heard you make earrings. I heard you plant fig trees. I heard you move to LA. I heard you drink water out of a mason jar. Hey, whoever you were, come out of whoever you are.
Hey Les, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so excited. You have so much cool stuff in your resume to talk about. I was so
Thank
excited
you.
when I got the ask. I also we could start with you've got a brand new song. Tell me a little bit about
Yeah.
Come Out, what you're doing right now, where folks can find that.
So I wrote this song I do a lot of concert work in Manhattan, and for my first big songbook show back after the pandemic, I really wanted to write a song that doubled as an open number that felt like a reintroduction to my body of work after the pandemic, but then also sort of doubled as something more, like a breakup song or like a song to an ex-best friend or something. Because I love a song that sort of starts one way and we think we know where it's going, and then there's some sort of twisty something at the end. So I just love the response to that song at that show, and I just could not get it out of my head. And I was like, I just need to go into the studio and record this and get some live horns, playing these awesome horn lines. So we did that a couple months ago, and recorded this really, really fun music video, this super campy gay 80s wedding moment, with a drag queen officiant, and sort of fleshed out the story of this song. And I think because of that, the song sort of has just a really fascinating narrative to it now that I just adore, and I'm just so excited for people to hear it because I think it's a total summer bop. I have it on my running playlist. I think everybody else should add it to their cardio playlist if they have one.
Yeah, it's super fun. And watching the video, I had that same feeling of like, wait a minute, what is this song about? As it got into more of a like, who are you now? No, I knew you. You're not that. Which is just it's hilarious. Folks should definitely check it out. I was struck by in your bio how young you started. You found your groove, so to speak, or found your thing. Can you talk a little bit about discovering music and how you got from hum a melody, I like songs, to the complexity of the arrangements, just the skill beyond the talent that has to be brought to bear for your stuff to sound like this?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for asking, and thank you for those kind words. I grew up in a very musical household. As any gay boy in the tri-state area, I was a child actor. which mostly just involves, begging my parents to take me to open calls for Broadway shows, and not booking The Lion King for obvious reasons. I did a lot of community theater, and my favorite day during the rehearsal process for these shows was always the first day, when you would get the hardbound copy of the script. And I would just sort of like leaf through this script and be like, oh my God, one day I want to do these. I want to like make the books the shows are in, So I sort of started writing music and musicals at a very young age. When I was like 8 or 9, like that was like what I would do, like with my free time in like math class or whatever. I would just be there with like my little spiral bound notebooks, just sort of writing these songs and, writing these melodies that pretty much only existed in my head. And granted, most of the melodies were like plagiarized at the time, but it worked for Weird Al. So,
right.
But yeah, so from there, I just sort of, kept writing and writing and writing. And, I actually was just going through my old like childhood desk because my parents are, redoing my childhood bedroom. They're at that point in their lives right now. So I was just throwing out a bunch of stuff, and I found all these like old handmade playbills of like the shows that I wrote from when I was 10, just like imagining like what Broadway theater they're going to be at and who was going to be in the cast. And like, let me say, some of them were very star-studded. But yeah, so anyway, I had a really supportive high school theater teacher, who sort of saw how much writing music meant to me and creating musical theater meant to me, and sort of guided me along that process and sort of validated the fact that being a musical theater writer is a viable career path. So because of that, she sort of sent me these competitions and these different things to submit to, and, set up a couple of meetings for me to meet with these people. And that sort of like got my career going, and just got me in the room with other like professional musical theater writers who were like, yeah, this is something that you can do and you should focus on. So it really is like a matter of like over the last, however long, 15, 16 years, I have just been doing nothing but writing songs. I took piano lessons when I was a kid, but at this point it's pretty much all, chord based and by ear. And then, and what you said about sort of like fleshing out, orchestration and everything, I really appreciate you bringing that up, because like I'm a writer that like, because I grew up on like cast albums and, film soundtracks, I sort of think of songwriting in terms of orchestration, right? Like I think of like, oh, this song is going to have this crazy horn lick here, or it's, this song is going to be all about the drums or all about this like piano lick here. And I definitely think a lot of like new musical theater writers forget that the music is as much a part of the character as the lyrics are. And that's something that I sort of love in my writing, is like playing with genre and playing with, musical style and, even just like simple note intervals to sort of tell a story. And so that's sort of been the process of that.
When it comes to putting together not just a single song, but the entire project, something like Little Black Book or your Star Wars musical, or even Singfeld coming up, there's a part to these process that is a grind. People I write and people will say, everybody in LA's got a script, or everybody in LA's got a novel they're working on or whatever. Yeah, very, very few of them are all the way done with it. And then all of the grueling stuff past that, there's just so much more to a project. Do you remember the first time that you really kind of ran into that, like, no, I want this done, but it's not exactly fun at this moment of it?
Yeah. Oh, that's a great question. I mean, yes. The first thing that I think of was, so the first show that I wrote when I was a kid, that got produced was this show called Balloon Boy, the musical, which was based on the news story about the father who said that his son was stuck in a homemade weather balloon. I'm actually shocked that Ryan Murphy hasn't made a mini series about it yet. So,
I remember that whole thing. I'm with you. I could totally see Ryan. That's going to be an anthology season of something, right?
Right. Exactly. Darren Criss as the balloon boy, with Sarah Paulson as the father. And so I read that like when that event happened. I was in 7th grade, so the first draft was like written in the cafeteria with like a couple of my friends, and at the time, the person who was like directing our middle school musicals was starting this children's theater company, and they were looking to do like a show that was written by a kid, you know, a local kid or whatever. So they were like, yes, we will do Balloon Boy. We'll premiere, you know, we book this little theater in the city and we'll, you know, do it for 3 nights there or whatever. And I did not know how to like transcribe sheet music at the time. And they were like, oh, like, yeah, we can, you know, help you transcribe sheet music. And then because I, you know, ended up giving them, you know, impossible like voice memos of me just like singing all the parts and singing all the piano parts and everything, they were like, actually, we're not going to do that. We're going to just use kazoos and slide whistles and like a couple like piano tracks. So eventually Balloon Boy the musical for that first version became Balloon Boy the Kazoozical. That was literally the title of that version of it. And, you know, it was like as insane as you would expect a musical with all kazoos about the balloon boy performed by 7 8th graders at a theater in the city could be. And I remember like, you know, leaving that experience being like, oh my God, like this was not what I expected it to be. Like I thought like, you know, where's the Broadway theater? Why isn't Broadway calling now, you know? But you know, after that it was a musical that like I could not put down and just like continued writing and working on. And, you know, like I still think to this day, like there probably will be a day when I like go back and like pick that piece up again, because I just worked on that for so many years of my life, you know, and we did it at NIMF, the New York Musical Theater Festival, and, you know, a high school did it in Colorado, and, you know, we did a big concert of it a couple of years ago in Manhattan, you know, and obviously it has changed so much. But that's the thing with musical theater, you know, they always say that musicals are not written, they're rewritten. The process of creating a musical involves primarily just like rewriting, and that is sort of the ephemeral nature of theater, is that it disappears as it happens. So, you know, there will never be a definitive version of a new musical because it's just constantly changing. And, you know, it's a lot, and it's like emotionally grueling to deal with that, but it also is what sort of is what I love about it, is just that like the work is never really over. So yeah, and, you know, I think, you know, something like A Little Black Book, right, which we put out this big concept album for a few years ago now, and, you know, it will most likely be produced next year. It is this thing where, like, you know, those are not the definitive version of those songs. You know, those are constantly changing still and being rewritten. Again, it's like a lot, like, you know, to deal with sometimes, but like, it's why I love it. You know, some of my favorite musicals are musicals that have been, you know, rewritten for 30 years, you know, like Merrily We Roll Along by Stephen Sondheim, which, you know, is a show that I did in high school and is probably my favorite Sondheim score. That show flopped on Broadway in 1981, and they have been rewriting it ever since, with, you know, between 10, 15 productions of that show. There was no like definitive version of that show. And I just think that's so exciting for the form of musical theater.
Yeah, I don't ever really think about the living nature, kind of living document nature of these things. When the playwright is still alive and active, and the same directors or the cast is going, versus oftentimes when you see a play or a piece of theater filmed, there's an odd quality to it of being trapped in amber and not being as alive somehow. And when I talk to folks that do cabaret shows, they always talk about the give and take of the audience and the one-off nature of, you know, not necessarily improv, but even just with an audience there for a cabaret show, that's that night. That's the only time that happened. You can sing those same songs again, but, you know, how many live albums did Sinatra have? They're all slightly different.
Right. And he gets the lyrics to New York, New York wrong in every single one.
As you know, nobody could stop him. God knows somebody tried, but so when you're writing something like Come Out, I know that has band components. You've got other people playing instruments and such, but versus writing for someone else's voice, say in Little Black Book, do you feel differently about those songs? Do you think of things sometimes and put that over in a different bin in your mind of like, that's my voice, that's another character, another person?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I like grew up loving like the crazy character actresses of Broadway. Like my heroes growing up were like Judy Garland and like Carol Channing and like Cheetah Rivera and like all these people who like never would have survived a musical theater program now. Like I love like just like this concept of like star quality that cannot be taught, and so I think, like something like A Little Black Book, what I love about that album is that like you have 11 like completely eclectic and unique voices doing those songs, sort of all inhabiting one person's story. But, I think we just got the perfect person for each of those songs. And I think at the end of the day, like, they always say that like theater is the writer's medium. And I sort of agree with that. But I really think at the end of the day, theater is performer's medium because they are the person out there, every single night doing the show over and over again. They are the person connecting with the audience. So I just love being able to write for performers and for their specific skill set. I love anytime a performer like comes to me and asks me, to write specialty material for them or for a cabaret or something. It's one of my favorite things. And, I've always said like my dream career is to like be like the Mark Shaman to somebody's Bette Midler, like just sort of have that like, intimate understanding of an incredible talents toolbox and sort of, help them flourish that. So that sort of does sort of work the same way for me and for my skill sets as a performer. I love sort of being able to like tap into knowing what I do well as a performer and knowing what I don't do well as a performer, and allowing myself, every now and then to like write my own sort of star vehicle, I suppose, because like every single song that I write always starts with a demo of myself singing the song. And, when you do that enough for, enough years, you sort of develop a pretty keen understanding of what you do as a vocalist and what works for you as a sort of musical storyteller. So any opportunity that I get to sort of tap into that is always really exciting and refreshing to me. Because I love those like cabaret performers who are also songwriters. Like I loved like the work of like Joe Iconis growing up and, all these like this generation of musical theater writers like just before me who sort of were writing their material and doing concerts at 54 Below and then posting them on YouTube. Like that was sort of like the earliest like introduction to me as like a teenager that like this is like what like the current musical theater writer does. Like they do these shows at 54 Below like with themselves at the piano, like singing, some of their songs and then bringing their friends up on stage to sing along with them. So I was sort of like trained on that vibe of performer. So like of songwriters. So like there was always just sort of that like in the back of my mind that like little performer, songwriters can also perform thing there which I just love.
Yeah, I think it's often easy. I mean, now, I live in the middle of the country and it's easy with theater, especially musical theater, to find yourself thinking of it perennially 50 to 70 years ago somehow. Like if I ask somebody to name 3 musicals, like the odds that the newest one is Cats is going to be stupidly high. That oftentimes like people just, I even find myself going, oh yeah, what's your favorite musical? And name dropping something that's like 60 years old. Like that's insane. Like you forget like this is a changing art form. Like what is it like now?
Right.
And that's
right.
That's got to be big for you coming up and
know.
learning and doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I love this, there was this revival of Oklahoma a couple of years ago where they really took a crazy approach to it. and like completely changed how it's normally staged and everything. And I just love that so much because like we do that with Shakespeare all the time.
You always get weird Shakespeare.
We're always like, right, exactly. So like, why not like think enough of the art form, that this purely American art form that we have created to like treat it like Shakespeare and to, of course, like honor the versions of the shows that, as they were written and as we know them to exist, but also fuck around with it a little bit. I think the art form can take that. It's so exciting to me.
Now I want to see some Texas high school do a one-act space Oklahoma or something.
100%. Oklahoma in space.
Yeah, give me 40 minutes of Oklahoma in space. Surrey with a fringe on top.
Exactly.
Of it. You can do it.
Just the highlights. I don't need the whole thing. Yeah, I just want to see the dream ballet.
That's great. And I mean, I know that new thinking about what's new about this and how this can be brought to bear now is definitely in your work. I mean, you wrote a musical about Star Wars. You wrote a musical about the Balloon Boy hoax. Tell me a little bit about trying to write a musical about nothing with the Singfeld.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for asking. Yeah, so I mean, I'm like a writer who I'm so invested and interested in pop culture and specifically like how the pop culture that we consume shapes us as a society and, on both a macro and a micro level. So, I will, write a show like a Balloon Boy or like a Little Black Book, from time to time where, I sort of think of them as, in the Shakespeare mold, like a modern day history play, right? So then you have, a show like a musical about Star Wars or the show that I'm working on right now, Singfeld, a musical about nothing, which then sort of take the text, the sort of sacred text of modern day pop culture and sort of spin it around, and I think that is sort of like, honestly, it has roots in like the pageant play, right? Or in like, ancient Greek theater, like we are always like retelling stories, or like, fairy tale theater, like we're always retelling these stories that we grow up on, that we have passed down from generation to generation and shaping them, for a new audience. So I was brought on to Singfeld by Bob and Tavali McSmith, who wrote the Friends musical parody and the Office musical parody that are running off Broadway, and they're just the funniest guys and just have like such a keen understanding of what works in an off-Broadway musical parody. So they were looking for a new composer for this piece. And I was a Seinfeld fan. I was a major Curb fan growing up, a major like Larry David fan growing up. So they asked me to come on board and sort of help shape this new musical with them. So I loved having a reason to go back and watch all of Seinfeld again. It's never a bad time to do that. So it was a pretty fast turnaround. I got brought on for this project at the start of the year in January, and we are now in previews,
wow.
Which is, pretty rare for a new musical. It can take, several years to get a show up, but these guys are the kings of off-Broadway musical parody. So we're having a great time. Audiences are loving it. And it's just so fun to sort of like take a gag or, a famous moment from an episode of Seinfeld and hyper theatricalize it, because I think that is what musical parody is all about, right? Is this idea of, not just commenting on something, but, taking it 2 steps further. So that's what we're doing. And, I think fans of Seinfeld are going to come and see some of their favorite moments just sort of like really put into hyperdrive, and just theatricalized in a really crazy and exciting way.
Yeah, I feel like Seinfeld would be a show that would particularly fit that heightening, considering that that's kind of what it was doing anyway. It was just taking a puffy shirt or something and making it the biggest thing in the world for that 30 minutes.
Exactly. I mean, there's like a surrealness to it. You know, there is like just this over the top quality with like the minutia of everyday life, and that is sort of like what musical theater is. You know, like just this idea of like breaking into song is so similar to like what you're saying, like spending a half hour, you know, talking about being lost in a parking garage,
right?
Or you know, yeah. So it's been super fun.
Well, and Seinfeld as modern day folklore is now my favorite idea of the day. Because I'm just like, oh yeah, no, I heard about those folks that got lost in that parking garage that time. Yeah, you got to be careful in parking garages.
Yes, it's the Bible. It's, you know, my favorite is the Book of Elaine. You know, chapter 24. Yeah, absolutely.
Thou shalt not dance.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much for talking to me about it all today. I'm going to include Come Out with the interview so folks can hear it.
Thank you, Les. I really appreciate that.
Have a great rest of your day.
All right, thank you so much. Have a great one. Bye.
TV Dudes is an independently run podcast out of Austin, Texas. We are exclusively listener supported. If you'd like to help us out, go to patreon.com/tvdudes.
You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at TV Dudes. All the music for our show is done by our friend and original TV Dude, Gregory J. Amani Smith.
To find out more about us, go to thetvdudes.com. I'm Randy Lander.
I'm Les Weiler.
And I'm Kyle Scott.
Thanks for listening.